Hello and welcome to Pluralsight. Welcome to this course, Microsoft Azure Administrator, Managing Subscriptions and Governance. This is the first of two modules in this course called Managing Subscriptions. Hello, my name is Michael Teskey, and I'm happy you joined me in this course. This is the first course of the Manage Azure Identities and Governance. Functional group. The other courses in the AZ1. Hello and welcome to Pluralsight. Welcome to this course, Microsoft Azure Administrator, Managing Subscriptions and Governance. This is the first of two modules in this course called Managing Subscriptions. Hello, my name is Michael Teskey, and I'm happy you joined me in this course. This is the first course of the Manage Azure Identities and Governance functional group. The other courses in the AZ104 functional group are Manage Azure Active Directory Objects, Manage Role-Based Access Control, and then finally we'll have a course that's called an Exam Alert. I will review areas identified in the previous courses where I thought there was a pretty good chance you could see a question from a particular section. That way, you don't have to go through each course again, although that's not a bad idea for exam prep. In this module, Managing Subscriptions, we're going to do just that. We're going to look at subscriptions and we'll identify what it means to manage your subscriptions. In doing so, we'll need to look at cost management and how we can leverage resource tags to make our administration easier. As always, you can find the exercise files for this course in the Pluralsight player. Click the Exercise Files tab and then click Download Exercise Files. Files will contain PDF copies of the slide decks for note-taking purposes, as well as any links to the resources we explore throughout the course, along with other information I thought would be helpful. Now, these courses in this certification path are designed with the AZ104 Admin Associate in mind, versus a solutions architect or expert. So that's my scope for this course. I've included links to the topics we cover, which will provide that additional depth in the exercise files. You will also find scripts with the commands demonstrated in this course as well. It's all going to be in there. So when we say manage subscriptions, what types of subscriptions does Azure offer? Well, they offer quite a few. Now, the most common billing types you'll see are the pay-as-you-go, which is what I use, which is a bill monthly based on consumption. And then there's the enterprise agreement, or EA, where you commit to a contract and pay upfront based on the term length. Now, this is a very minimized graphic or schematic of what we might see the hierarchy within a typical subscription. Now, at the very bottom, we have the bottommost pieces of our subscription, which is the resources. These are the individual instances of services provided by Azure, such as an instance of a virtual machine, databases, web apps, among many other things that we have available to us in Azure. Next, we have resource groups. You cannot create a resource without a resource group. They can be created on the fly while you're deploying that resource, or you can associate it to an existing resource group. Think of a resource group as a logical container for your resources. You may create a resource group for a particular project, and when that project is done or that life cycle is done, all you simply need to do is, well, delete the resource group. Something to consider here is that resources can be moved to other resource groups or subscriptions. However, you'll need to make sure certain conditions are met based on that resource. We'll talk about that in the next module. Now, each subscription has limits or quotas on the amount of resources you can create or use. Organizations can use subscriptions to manage costs and the resources that are created by users, teams, or projects. And then sort of at the uppermost level of the management are management groups. And we'll look at these in the next module. They are created to help manage access, assign policy, and compliance among multiple subscriptions. As a former on-prem AD admin, I think that's sort of like organizational units. You can assign policy to these, not group policies, but different types of policies, Azure policies, which we'll see in the next module. Now, when I say sort of uppermost level, they aren't required, and you have to create them yourself. The true uppermost level is your Azure AD tenant. That's their free version of the Active Directory when you sign up. Now, with that, you can associate and tag policies to the management groups. which we'll talk about in the next module. You can also apply role-based access control, or RBAC, at each scope, which I'll get into in another course in this functional group. Now, some factoids regarding subscriptions and the resources they contain. Now, you might see questions related to these items, most notably the ability to move resources between subscriptions. That's what I saw in my exam. You can also transfer subscriptions between tenants. And then finally, a single tenant can have multiple subscriptions. If you think about it, this makes cost allocations and budgets easier to manage along with applying resource tags. You can have a sub for your dev team and then a sub for your production team and keep them separate as different cost centers. So let's get our hands dirty. We're going to jump onto Azure's homepage and see what the pricing breakdowns are and look at the pricing calculator. Then we'll dive into the portal and we'll look specifically at the subscriptions blade to see the different types of options that we have there. So let's get started. Here we are on the Azure homepage. Now let's go up here into the pricing. So if we go into the Azure pricing calculator, just to give you an example on how you can get a forecast of what it may look like to at least spin up a few VMs or maybe even do a whole scenario of migrating your workloads to Azure. So let's just scroll down here. Now I'm going to select virtual machines. Now what this is going to do is it's going to spin up the virtual machines view. So as I scroll down, it's going to give us our estimates. So it's looking at the central US region, and I selected the Linux operating system. Notice it has a monthly cost of $80.35, and this is spinning at 730 hours. Now, some things to consider as well is where will you be spending most of your time, meaning which regions will you live in. So if we look at this up here, we select, let's look at West US 2 and see what that does to our monthly spend. Oh, it brings it down a little bit. Now let's look at our operating system. Oh yeah, it's going to bring it up a little bit. We switch to Windows. So let's jump in the portal and we'll look at the subscriptions blade. Here we are on the portal. So I'm at my dashboard. Now where I can find the subscriptions, if I look on the left-hand side, I can grab subscriptions. Here in the subscriptions blade, now I'm going to bump this out to give us a little more room. Now I have one subscription that's active right now. It's called PS Course Development. I can add another subscription from this blade. So let's click Add. So what we're going to see here is the different types of offers that we'll have. Now the most popular ones, as we see here, are free trial, pay-as-you-go, then Azure for Students. So as we can see here, there's quite a few different options that we can add to our existing environment. So let's close out of this window and go back to where we were. Now here in the subscription, if I click on my subscription that I have active right now, notice it says the role, it says account admin, and then my current cost is $18, so I don't have a lot going on in the subscription at the time. Here are some buttons. When we're looking at configured cost management as it relates to AZ 104, within cost management, we can look at costs and trends through cost analysis with the goal of being able to better forecast our Azure spend, which really makes our accounting folks really appreciative. Then we have cost alerts. You can set thresholds as a percentage of a monetary amount. For example, we can apply budgets, which I can add cost thresholds to send me an email when I'm about 75% of my budget. Furthermore, I can also put an action to that. I can help reduce any more eating away at my budget by creating an action for this alert to say, for instance, stop a VM if it's running. As an exam alert, you may have to determine if any alerts are triggered for a spending period based on the threshold set along with the consumption dollars provided. Finally, within cost management, you'll see recommendations. These are steps to reduce our costs if Azure sees something that's a little bit out of control. For example, Maybe we can scale down an instance or switch to a lower app service plan based on the limited usage that Azure is experiencing. All right, let's go into cost management and we'll flip some of those switches. What we're going to look at is we're going to look at our cost analysis. We'll look at budgets and how we can create some of those budgets and set up different action groups. Then finally, we'll look at our recommendations, basically what Azure is going to recommend to help manage our costs a little bit better. Let's get started. Now, just like all these other resources, I want to link you to the Azure Docs sites that covers these services and goes in a little bit deeper than what we're covering in this certification course. So if you want the deeper dives, you can go into these docs. So here's the cost management overview. And it has a couple different quick starts for start analyzing costs, creating a budget, and then some different tutorials. Really, really good information. This is basically what I've used and leveraged to help pass the 104 exam myself. All right, so let's go back into the portal and we'll dive into cost management. And we have it here, and then we also have it here. They're going to ask, where